You've got a million years of experience between the two of us, I think.
We have, yeah, definitely. So I'm Luigi Carnovale from DesignLSC, a small studio. If you'd like to think about it on the scale size, it's myself and partners that come in as needed with every project. Been going a long time. Interestingly, Andy and I have known each other for some years, but it's only since COVID, I think, where we've spent a lot of time together. And we're literally we're so similar in our outlook.
Not in dress sense, obviously.
And it just seemed a natural thing that one day we would do a talk together. I'm dead nervous, I'll be honest with you, because I usually organise these things. But with Andy and his experience, and particularly the slides he's going to show you, it's quite staggering, really, how similar our paths are. So rather than repeat the story, me give my studio and my best ofs, and I thought I'd be partly speaker and partly attendee as you guys. So I'll be jumping in with questions as well. But yeah, looking forward to this.
Cool. Yeah, so just feel free to jump in. Like I said, between us, we've got a lot of experience and a lot of a broad range of design.
Yeah.
And also it depends on how you look at the word design and how you look at the word brand and brand identity and all that stuff that you guys are talking about in your current, whatever it is. What do you call them?
Modules.
Group.
Yeah.
Modules. Yeah. So anyway, I don't know how much people know about Wash Studio in Preston, but actually, I had a chance of turning this light off. Is that? Yeah, we're quite an unusual business, and we've created ourselves a brand of disaster, which we're trying to work out what the heck to do with it at the minute. But there's actually 4 parts to the business. And so we've got Wash Studio, which is the sort of centre pin, which is sort of really, we do all things that are brand related. So everything from identities right through to campaign. And then we've got Wash Films, which is now a specific thing that just does film production. So we do from TV commercial to corporate production. Done a lot of work with the university here at Imagination. And we've got the Artistry House, which is now our building that we are in, which is a business in itself, which we do events, and we wanted to create a place for creatives to gather and come together. And on the back of that, we've got an interior design business called the Artistry House Interiors. And we do where we will go out and, we're just doing a brand for a store in Walmsley, for example. So we'll do all the identity, but they'll also do the interior design and fit out. So there's a hell of a lot going on in our business, and there's only 6 of us. So we're only a small team. We're not a big agency by any stretch of the imagination, and we're based in Preston. We're not in the big cities, so which we can come to. So just as a bit of a team breakdown, we've got Lindsay, who's the MD on the end there. She's my business partner. We've got Ben, who teams up with me on the films. Rose, who's the interior designer, Gary, who's in design, Becky, who's really the creative director now. She's my art director, but now creative director. She leads the creative. And then this old hippie on the end is obviously me. So me and Luigi were chatting about this. So what we decided to do was just talk about adaptation. So, you're all young people studying design, and by the time you're our age, the landscape's going to be completely different to what you're looking at now. Completely different. You guys are going to go through a storm of creativity, good and bad. But we've all been through it. Luigi and I have both been through that storm. Yeah. So we wanted to sort of talk. It's not really I don't want it to be just an ego trip. Is Andy's story. There's a message in this. So that's why we wanted to pull it apart, and we've both been through the same journey. So it's about adaptation, and you've got to learn to adapt. And we've had careers of adaptations. We've just been talking about that in the car. How we've had to started off doing flyers for music
rave flyers,
gigs and stuff to, you know, what Luigi's doing now. So that's what this talk's about, really, of how to prepare yourselves to go through the world of creativity, really, not just design, how you can broaden your minds and where you think you are now, how you can adjust to adapt to what's going to be coming at you over the next 5-10 years. So I'll just keep going. So basically, I left school at 16 with no qualifications. I had a terrible education due to my own lack of interests, really. And it was the sort of late 70s, early 80s. It was a very heady time. And I put this slide in because at the minute there's a lot going on in the world. And, you know, it's always sometimes when things are going on. I mean, I've got kids your age, you know, and they look at me and think, what the hell's happening in the world? Where's our future going? But it's always been the same, really. I mean, I know there's dynamics. There's been wars going on. There's been, you know, we lived in the times where there's, you know, we were leaving school in sort of the miners' strikes and the stuff that was happening at the time. It was really difficult. There was no jobs, really. It was either go and work at BAC, BAE, or go and join the army. So I went to join the army. That's another story. Anyway, so it was a heady time. So, you know, the prospects were amazing and unemployment was rising. You know, I mean, really now, to be fair, there's probably way more opportunity now in your work than there was when we were kids. You know, we weren't guided whatsoever by our parents, by our education. I didn't even go to university. I didn't have a clue about design, not a clue. So if I can do it, anyone can do it.
Yeah.
So they're basically the only sound bites that, you know, the only little thing I could hang my hat on really is that I could draw a bit. I was always a creative thinker, even at school, and I got offered there was a youth opportunity scheme system that at the time the Thatcher government brought out, and it was literally £1,300 a year.
Yeah.
Is that right?
That was it, yeah.
25
quid a week.
25 quid a week. So, and I got a job in the newspapers. So there was a company called Hamilton Press, and they basically did free newspapers, and I was basically learning to be a paste artist. Hi. And then I got a job at the Lancashire Evening Post. So basically, Lancashire Evening Post is in Preston. It was the local newspaper that went out across Lancashire. You've probably never heard of Lancashire Evening Post, but it was, in them days, it was the go-to.
Yeah, it was. Yeah.
You know, they had adverts in there for if you wanted to sell your car, you know, local news about old Terry in the pub got duffed up, whatever it was. Yeah. And the job then was basically, it was called the paste artist, the job in artist. So I was doing ad creation, so making adverts that went in the newspaper, pretty basic stuff. But bear in mind, there was no newspapers, no computers, so everything was done, you can see there, everything was done by hand. You can see where you mark up all your text, point sizes, and you know, so you learn everything about leading, kerning, typography, you know, and you learn how to do things super quick because you're on a really tight deadline, newspaper deadline. It was every day that newspaper was going out. So you had to work your socks off to get stuff out. And you learned the skills to draw. Everything was hand done. So if somebody wanted a picture of a lawnmower, you know, you know, there was a guy called Colin who used to sit in the corner. Colin was amazing. And you would ask him, Colin, would you knock me up a lawn? And we'd have clip art. Yeah. And we'd have Letraset, which you guys probably have never heard of. But have you heard of Letraset?
Try transfer lettering. Yeah. It comes in a sheet form, and you have these perfectly sort of almost photomechanical letters that are on one side of the sheet, and it's a clever system. And you rub on the facing side of the sheet, and the pressure that you apply, particularly around the letters, releases the letter, and the sheet comes away from it. And actually, in itself, was a great way of creating.
You'd be doing headlines with letters. Yeah. So you'd have an advert, wouldn't you? Yeah. Do a headline, whatever it would be.
You rub down letters.
And you had to be so accurate. You know, you had to You had to do borders, you know, hand drawn. But I mean, you're all looking as if like we're like dinosaurs, but it's, you know, it's just mad when you look back.
It's mad because some of the music that you guys are into, the bands will be influenced by a lot of the visuals and the sounds from that period that we were designing in. And those seminal sleeves, posters, you name it, often they were created using that technology of the day, wasn't it?
Yeah, brilliant. Well, look at all my rotary pens. They call rotary pens. Everything was real and tangible, whereas now it's all in the cloud.
But the interesting thing about that time, as in this time when I was talking to Tony, none of us had a clue. We didn't leave college, school, or if you were lucky to go to university, with a skill set to use these things.
Nah.
None of us did. So it's incredible. We're in the same spot. We were in the same spot that you guys are now, probably feeling a little bit like we're not ready.
They'll have more of a clue than we
Well, they will.
But, yeah.
Probably we're not ready. And yet, as Andy said, they throw you in. I mean, to go into a situation where you've left school or just come out of the army and gone into newspaper design.
I wasn't in the army, by the way.
No, you just had a
No, I failed the exam.
Did you?
I failed all my exams. I've never passed an exam in my life.
Well, I spent a week at Fulwood Barracks in Preston, and then they realised, and I realised that I have an Italian passport, so I could never join the British Army. But,
I went to join, but I just failed.
But no, it's...
Anyway, yeah.
But the interesting thing about looking at that, what Andy said, do you see all the clutter? Do you see all the mayhem on the desk? And actually, the area that you worked in was quite small.
I've actually cleaned up that background. That back image there is covered in.
And that's probably July, isn't it? And you've still got your Christmas decorations up.
Yeah.
It's
It was the work in the newspaper was mad. Behind that wall was just a sales team selling ad space. It was just frantic. It was proper. I know it was a local newspaper, but it was
busy. It was an important newspaper.
It was in them days. It was an important newspaper. It was like being on Fleet Street. It felt the energy was phenomenal. It was really cool. There's a if anyone's on Facebook, you're probably not on Facebook. It's not cool anymore, is it? But if you are on Facebook, there's a thing called Preston Past and Present, and there's somebody's put a video out of the LEP 1979 just in the offices. If you ever get a chance to see it, what an archive. Anyway, but this is why you've got to look at history, right? You've got to look at what's going on in the world around you if you're going to be creative. You can't just blow along and think, well, that's a nice typeface, that's a nice logo, I'll do this. You've got to know what's going on in the world. You have to know what's the shifts going on in society around you. And I was happy in the newspaper game. I was learning skills. I was learning to be a visualizer. I was starting to use different skills, all hand drawn, no computers because they didn't exist. And then basically just after the miners' strike, I was in the union called the NGA, National Graphics Association, and there again, the miners got sort of flattened, and then they came after the NGA because they were a very powerful union.
Yeah.
And then they got battered. Now, I'm not getting into politics because we're not here to do that, but it's quite an interesting time that if you look at your history, because there wasn't that many design studios around at that time, because really you couldn't move because it was sort of everything was kept down by the unions. It was quite a tight thing. There were bigger agencies, but there wasn't really the little, like now there's millions of design studios in every town and every bloody village. Unpick a stone, there's a design agency.
It's far more democratic now. It's interesting you say that, Andy. It was. I mean, now, if there isn't a studio that you aspire working to here in Lancaster or Preston or whatever, you and a couple of guys can set up your own studio.
Dead easy. You couldn't
Just
do
like
it nowadays. You couldn't. You weren't.
And you could ring Andy and I and say, hey, "Have you got any overspill?" Yeah. Come in, pick up a job, and you're up and running.
Yeah.
It's incredible.
It's so easy. Whereas then it wasn't easy. It was a whole different gig. So anyway, so that sort of started to change my mindset. I realised being in the newspaper game really wasn't gonna. It's being crushed. So, but I in my own spare time, I was always into illustrating. I was a bit of a fantasist. I used to draw all sorts of weird stuff, doodling, and I'd loved it. And I really loved it. And that was my escape. That was my hobby. And it was just a thing that I did a lot of. And in, I think it was 91, You don't know this, do you? Not told this bit.
No, okay.
I got offered a job in a small gaming company as a character designer. And they offered me less money than I was on at the time. So I was like, oh, do I do this? And bearing in mind, I was into sort of like Josh Kirby, Patrick Woodruff, Roger Dean, amazing artists. If you're into sort of fantasy art, fantastic artists. Check them out; they're really good. And I didn't want to hear Terry Pratchett, right? So, well, Josh Kirby did the Terry Pratchett book covers, and was it Josh Kirby? I think it was. Anyway, check that out. I might be wrong there, but if I'm right, then I'm not. Anyway, he's a great artist. But so that was in my head where gaming should be. Bearing in mind, this is like the 90s. In reality, it looked like that, right? It was bloody awful. And I remember going to this interview and thinking, gaming, I'm not really a gamer. I love doing the characters. You know, they offered me the job, less money. And classic, this is what I mean about adaptation, right? Having to have you need to have some foresight. You need to go, right, okay, this is happening now. Where's that going to be in 10 years' time? I didn't have that foresight because I didn't really have a clue. I spent my time down at the pub, really. I didn't have a clue about the design world. I'd worked in the newspapers, went to the pub, that was it. And I got offered this job and I just thought, I can't see a future in gaming. You know, I mean, how mad's that? I just couldn't see. I couldn't see how it would become the biggest industry in the creative world. It's probably one of the biggest. Yeah. And, you know, I think this was a stat that I picked up not that long ago, you know, that Microsoft acquires Activision Blizzard, whoever they are, some gaming company. 68.
It's incredible.
It's mad, isn't it?
Incredible.
So I keep that sliding because whatever you're doing now, like I said, just have some foresight and think, right, okay, where's it going? Where's the world going? Where's AI going? You know, I don't know who came to the AI talk. I don't know whether you knew about it, but you need to keep your eye on it. So that was a change, big change for me. Anyway, I turned the job down. That was that, and I got offered a job in a local agency. So I wanted to get out of newspapers. I'd realised that when I was working in the newspapers, these adverts used to come in. So we would create some adverts, but other adverts would come in from outside and they'd have a stamp on the back and it'd say such and such an agency, you know. I think, who's that? And I realised then there was a thing called advertising agencies and design, you know, I didn't know they existed. So I wanted to get into an advertising agency, but I hadn't got a chance because I was just a paste-up geezer, you know what I mean? I didn't have any qualifications, I didn't have a track record. But a mate of mine, this guy here in the middle, Leo, I'd worked with him on the newspapers and he's a fantastic illustrator, a guy called Leo Brown. Does a lot of children's books, great illustrator. This guy here, Dave, he's now head of marketing at Smith's Tool Equipment Hire. Don't know why I did that, but anyway, he's having a great time. But them two, they were brilliant. But I got a job at this little agency in Preston that opened my eyes into the agency world. It was amazing. They did a lot of catalogue stuff. It was boring as hell. And property guides, it was all stick and paste. But there again, you can see that's what a studio... The
technology of the day.
Yeah, that was what... All studios across the land, whether in the big agencies with the money, they all looked like that, really, didn't they? They were just
bit tidier maybe, but that's
spray
about
mount. This stuff here, you can see at the back.
It's deadly.
Yeah.
Right at the back there.
Get the little can at the back.
Next to the
bottle of water. So you'd sit on your drawing board, and the guys in the other room, there was one guy who'd sat there with his cigarette, and a kind of spray mount in one hand and a cigarette in the other. And he'd paste up and he'd spray. And this glue, it's spraying glue, and it just get into your lungs, and people were dying.
They were. It was terrible.
Anyway,
we used it every day.
Digress. But it was a crazy world, but there again, a way of learning your skill, wasn't it? Yeah. You weren't, I think nowadays, the go-to, it's nice to see that on the wall actually. It's great to see actual people writing, scribbling and drawing, because what we do, you talk about process, and a lot of people's process now is, we've got an idea, we need to come up with something for such and such a project. The first thing everyone does is jump on the internet and start Googling stuff or building a Pinterest bloody board, but everyone's doing the same shit. It just looks all somehow familiar. It's really hard to be that original. And I think somehow in them days you didn't have that resource. If you need to find something, you got the library, wouldn't you?
You would.
You know, you'd go out, wouldn't you?
Yeah, and often even the night before you'd be sketching it out, scribbling it out. It's, for me at least, that whole process led you to the craft element. So what I call ideas making, because you'd start off in one direction and possibly have your eye on something else, and that could be your next job. And so Andy's absolutely right. You actually took these steps through this job, no matter how small it was. It could be an advert, it could be a catalogue cover, and you started with a blank sheet of paper, and you worked through that idea. And often you think, oh, actually something's come to mind, and it could go somewhere else here. It could be better, but you've got a big clock in the corner saying, no, the client wants it there. And
tomorrow morning.
Tomorrow morning. And that's the beauty of working on these traditional methods, if you like. No different than what you would do now if you're asked to scope.
So, so you just, everything was, I mean, I ended up, my job ended up becoming what was called a visualizer. So you'd visualize everything. So when you go into a client to present an idea, you'd draw everything.
Yeah.
You wouldn't go online and do a mood board. You'd hand draw everything. So when I was trying to get out of the newspapers, I was teaching myself, and my dad, because I was, how old was I? I can't remember. Anyway, I was at home, and my dad had a shed, and I turned into a little studio, and I'd taught myself magic markers. How to visualize. So I ended up inevitably in the studio as I was working, I constantly getting asked to do visuals. And what was weird, I was working at this agency, and there was a company in Preston called Granthams who were bringing in these new machines, and I got to visualize them. These are just the visuals that we're going to go out and get some photography. And I thought, wow, you know, what is this stuff? It's Apple Mac. It was that thing. And, you know, it's like, I don't know, I just got this new laptop. It's phenomenal. It's the new M3 chip. It's like a spaceship. That wasn't, was it?
No.
Like a floppy disk. It was just, you couldn't, what's hard to get your head around, it's a bit like, I don't want to go on about AI, right? Because we've done that, but just quickly throwing it in. You can't imagine now AI. Well, you can actually now, but you couldn't imagine last week. You couldn't imagine AI coming out with a video of some woman walking down the street in Tokyo that looked so real. You couldn't imagine it. You could sort of get in there, but now it can happen. It was the same. It was the same then. You know, I was sticking things down. I was drawing stuff, and I thought, I'm cool. My job's safe. I'm never gonna get replaced by this little cretin here. No chance.
and look, and
you know,
incredible.
but unfortunately, it came. It didn't come that quick, did it? In the day, it was
because it was very expensive.
It was very expensive. But it did come, and I did have to. This is where I did have a bit of foresight. I realised that I didn't want to be sat every day with a mouse clicking pixels. That wasn't for me. And I've jumped a bit there, but I think I did realise then when that came out, there was a definite divide in the room, in that studio, to somebody who's a bit more techie, to somebody who's a little bit more organic and a bit more hands-on, which I was. I didn't want to be sat there all day long, and it divided the studios. It made people lose jobs. I mean, I endless amount of jobs of guys that I worked with who were older than me at the time. So I'd be 19, they'd be like in their 30s. They were all losing their jobs because they couldn't switch into this new way of thinking, i.e. working with an Apple Mac. So pretty much it was goodbye to that. Oh, I don't know what's happened to the time there. That's interesting. Anyway. So it was good that they are called magic markers, like felt tips, by the way.
Yeah.
So what I did then, so another adaptation then. So what I did, I realised that when I was working at this small agency, there was a guy who used to rock up in a Porsche, and he had the ponytail, proper 80s, 90s, early 90s, and he'd jump out the car and he'd come into the studio. And we were working for a big catalogue company, and he was the art director that did all the photo shoots with the models. And I thought, that's cool. And I thought, what does he do? And the guy, one of the lads with his cigarette and his spray mat went, oh, he's the art director, you know. I thought, wow, that's pretty cool. I want to be an art director. So I came in one morning and I just said to everybody, look, I'm an art director. I'm not going to, this is what I want to do. I'm just going to be an art director. And that was it. Just self-titled myself. Which was yes, the best thing I ever did. Because suddenly I was out going on shoots, and I was suddenly out, and this was my first shoot that I did. And it was basically a shoot for a motorcycle company that went round, you know, these cages that they fly around in cages. They were mental, these guys. And they wanted us to do a photo shoot. So we went out down to their place and we looked at them on the bikes and did this photo shoot. And I was only a young lad, you know what I mean? I didn't have a clue what I was doing, but we did this photo shoot. And I've got to tell this story. It's a bit crass, but I'm going to tell it anyway. So it's probably not right, but I'm going to tell it because I think it's funny. But these mountain bikers turned up, and there was a group of them. And the main guy brought his girlfriend along, and he said, I wanted to be in the photo shoot. So that's fair enough. So they got the bikes in and set up as a group, and she went off to get changed, and she came back out of this changing room with pretty much nothing on. And I didn't know what to do myself, and she just literally stood in front of me with pretty much half naked, and I was a wreck because I didn't quite know what to do myself. Anyway, that was a side story, but yeah. It was
to sell motorbikes.
Yeah, I realised then I'm not going to be doing glamour photography. It wasn't for me. Yeah, it was a bit embarrassing, but yeah. But it was just that
sign of the times. Then
I think sign of the times. I think they knew as a young art director didn't have a clue, so they scared the hell out of me. But it opened things up for me to work in lots of different studios. So the times were changing then. Like I said, because of what happened with the world of politics and the world of the industry, there's lots of studios springing up here, there, and everywhere. And I'm jumping through timelines now, but there was lots of studios. Now I didn't want to move to the city. I went for an interview in Manchester to a big agency, and I got pretty much thrown out of the room because I'd come from the newspapers. I wasn't really that good at designing anything, and I got nowhere. So I thought, right, I'm gonna stay local, and that's something that we've both done this. We've both kept that sort of true passion to what we're about. I think that it's very easy. Well, hang on, let me rephrase that. The bigger, better, more glamorous work is definitely in the cities. There's no doubt about that. If you want to go out and
it's the opportunities, isn't it?
The opportunities are down there. Yeah, London, Manchester, you know, but London is where it's at for sure. So, but I couldn't hack it. You know, I was an outdoor guy. I love being on the fells. I'm always out on my bike. I just wanted to stay north. So I worked at lots of different studios over many years as an art director, doing lots of different things. I became a creative director at an agency, and we had a good time. We learned lots of different things. The technology was coming in. The internet suddenly was invented. Web suddenly became a whole new thing. So that period there was a massive technological change. And there again, another great divide in the studio where you've got like techies in one corner, creators in another. I mean, I worked at an agency called The Annex, this one here. He's not on this board, but there was a chap who worked there who took a real dislike to me because I was this creative oddball. And he was a programmer, and his brain worked in numbers. And he couldn't deal with me. And I came to work one morning, opened the door, and it was a terraced house in Preston, not far where I'm based now. And there was a staircase. And as I walked through the door, he had a chair, big heavy chair, and he threw it down the stairs at me. So I thought, from that, I don't really want to work with programmers anymore. They're all a bit weird. Yeah, I'm digressing again onto some weird story. I do apologise.
But these are the tensions that exist in studios.
Well, yeah,
because
there's a lot of tension.
Because people are protecting what they do best, what they believe in. No different. And it was only 6 months ago that Andy and I were really bricking it about AI. We were really thinking, oh, and I thought to myself, well, I don't know anything about it. Yeah. I do what I do. It's not going to touch me. But that was the story then. And it seemed to be, I always thought it was a 5-year thing. Every 5 years, looking back now, that there was always a seismic shift towards technology that made the other tech of the day look so antiquated. So,
yeah,
and you had to get used to this. So this, you know, I was speaking to Tony the other evening about you design for clients, but you're actually designing yourself every time. You're completely redesigning yourself to meet the demands of the world as it's clearly unfolding.
If you can't reinvent yourself or adapt to what's going on, get out now and go and do something else, because it comes at 100 mile an hour.
It does, and you can't force it. You are literally swept along by it. But that process, that journey of being swept along by any technological or political shift, more than likely will yield some of your best work.
Yeah, most definitely. So yeah, just did all sorts of different things through those agencies. I worked on some nice work, but I knew I couldn't work for anybody else. Just quickly going back, there was 2 opportunities where, you know, this team here, you know, we were a great little agency, but we were funded by some older guys who basically took all the money and we were doing all the work. Mm-hmm. You know, this agency here, you know, they tried to make us direct. It never quite worked. Everything, you know, we tried, it just never quite came about of actually being completely control of that business. And I think as a creative, you're control freaks. That's why you're all sat in this room. You can't help it. You know, that's what design is. You're creators. So you inevitably want to create and control your own destiny to a point. So it was really time to start thinking about having my own business. You know, what I've not mentioned about through all this as well, by the way, so I'm going to throw it out there. You know, it's great being sat here now. You know, I'm 57 years old. I've been through a lot of life. I'm confident. I can talk to you quite confidently. Back then, I had zero confidence. It took me many years to get to what I was doing. I couldn't present. I couldn't go into meetings and present. I used to suffer from anxiety that was crippling. Just thought I'd throw that in. It's not just all this, like, you know, this dude just flipping from one thing to another and everything's great. It's been really hard.
And people can read you in a room. Back in the day, you didn't have layers of people before you and the business owner. You were in front of the business owner. And if you were working for a large organisation, they would usually put somebody in place to deal with you. And you've got this individual looking at you who doesn't know anything about what you're doing, doesn't know anything about you. He's just been handed this job to deal with this designer or this creative person. And the level of anxiety in that room is just palpable, honestly. It's just incredible. So Andy used to maybe, you know, be very aware of that. I was acutely aware of it, so I would giggle at everything. You know, people would say something giggling, it's like the little kid giggling. It was just so unprofessional.
It's hard.
So this is the adaptation that's really important.
Yeah.
What Andy's about to talk to you about.
I think when you're presenting ideas in, you know, if you're a creative, I think part of it is as well, when you're a creator or a designer, you're very passionate, or you should be very passionate about what you do. So you walk into a room to present something or talk through an idea, it's part of you, do you know what I mean? It's coming from here. So if there's any critique or anything that people don't like it or whatever, you go straight to the heart. It's not like it just washes over you. It's quite a painful thing. Mix that with anxiety and nervousness. It comes out as and I've been in meetings where I couldn't speak. I've presented to boards and literally my brain has gone completely blank. It's horrible. But you've just got to go through it and keep battling on. And I think that passion does come through. That's what always won me the work. Same with Luigi.
Absolutely.
I think our passion is what people have bought into over the years. And I know, you know, somebody once joked that I came out the line, if you want slick, don't come to me. You know, I'm not a slick presenter by any stretch, but we're passionate about what we do. So that's just something to
It is interesting.
keep hold of.
It is, and you can use that almost like a profiler. Because you can't work for everybody. For me, just adding to what Andy said, that passion, if you're in a room, somebody reads that, can feel that, that's the person you should be working for.
Absolutely.
If you've got somebody who's looking around and can't wait to get out of the room, that is just an accident waiting to happen further down the line.
We live in a very image-conscious world, even more so now, influencers and Christ knows what. And I think people sometimes buy into the wrong things. I think if you can convince people that you're genuine and you're passionate about what you do, they'll buy into it. And like Luigi says, those people, you want to work with them. And I've got clients I've worked with for 30 years. They've moved on, but we've gone with them.
Yeah.
And, you know, that's because they buy into they know I'm going to give them 110%. They don't buy into, because I don't look like some hipster designer in the Northern Quarter.
Yeah.
You know, they don't want that. They want...
It's the passion. It's the one thing they identify the most. Most people own their own businesses or want to own the business that their boss owns at some point in their life. And if you feel this passion and you're able to, you know, obviously bring it to the meeting, bring it to the room, these smart people will say, well, look, if he's this crazy about my business, he's crazy about me. And that is so important. It's so important that somebody sees that in you. So often the case is, and the one bit of advice I would give you here, even at this stage, because dealing with Antonia and Neve, the passion is just palpable, even over Zoom. So design it if you can. When I keep on going back to about designing your own life, one thing that I've noticed with Andy's talk here is this adaptation comes from a place where, a space where he's probably sat back, looked at himself, looked at the world in front of him and said, right, I need to change. I need to design a new me. And that's what I'm talking about. This adaptation involves a lot of recreating of oneself, if you like. And it sounds grand, but it's not.
No. Well, no, it's not.
Kind of.
So yeah, I put that in. So basically, Wash was see it. So Wash basically. So I went into business with two brothers. So that's where the name Wash came from. It was Walmsley Shore. People often ask where do you get the name from. So that was it. Nothing clever about that. We just took the first two letters of the surname, Walmsley Shore, and we came up with Wash. So that was sort of a bit of a business plan we talked about in December 2002. And then by March 2003, Wash basically started well, we started off as a design business. We were called Wash Design Studio. Wasn't studio, but Wash Design. And I wanted to be purely a branding agency. That's what I wanted to do. I was into design, massively into design. I was, looking at some fantastic studios that are around at that time, like Spin and C and some great design studios within that period. I think, wow, this is what I want to be, So really tried to tailor the business at that time. We did a website and it was quite unique because Dan I was in business with, we went into business with, so there was Andrew, Dan and myself. And do you remember Tomato?
Yeah.
And who else was there? There was
Universal
Attic. Yeah. Some amazing studios around at that time.
Check them out. Check some of these guys. We'll put a list together later.
It was a fantastic period for design. It was exploding and people were really changing things and challenging things. And so I went into business with two guys because I didn't have the confidence to do it on my own. I wasn't brave enough. So Andrew was the sort of business development marketing guy. So he went out and tried to win the business. Dan, because technology was going like that, Dan was phenomenal in a software called Multimedia, which is a precursor to it was all the sort of anything moving at the time was all done in multimedia and Dreamweaver and Flash. You're nodding back there. You know that. Yeah. So that period, this technology was taking off. So as a designer, you think, well, I need to embrace this technology. I can't ignore it.
Yeah. And it's exciting as well, Andy.
This was honestly, we used to go to events, and it was just exciting. It felt like the world was like, this is just brilliant. It's so exciting and a great time to start a business. You know, I'm 36 years old. I felt like I was at my peak. So this was us back then. It was ace. And off we trotted. I mean, we didn't have a studio. That was my bedroom / office. And that's my son, who's now a filmmaker and artist and drummer and crazy guy. But that was the corner of our bedroom. That was our office. And that was the Apple Mac that I did have to get by on, which was a G3, I think it was.
It's quite old, wasn't it then?
Still got it. So that's it, and we're up and running. And you know, back then working from home wasn't a thing, but we didn't have a studio, so we worked from home. And we actually set up in Chorlton in Manchester originally, because that's where Dan and Andrew lived that way. Andrew was in Knutsford and Dan was in Chorlton. So I was really excited. I thought, great, let's do it in Manchester. Let's get out of Preston and let's go and do it. So we spent a lot of time traveling. We traveled everywhere, you know. Andrew had a Finnish wife. And when we first met and all the business plans we had, the idea was to look, biggest idea was to have an office in Helsinki. That was my dream, because I was so into sort of Scandinavian design. I thought, this is the dream. And obviously it didn't. There's a car crash coming, so that's why we're not in Helsinki and still in Preston. I'll come to that in a minute. But yeah, so it was all great. And we basically just went everywhere selling our wares. We weren't earning no money, you know what I mean? The first year. And those two guys, in fairness, they were quite from a wealthy family. They were all right for money. I wasn't from a wealthy family whatsoever. I was from a working class family, and I had no cash. So I had 2 kids. They didn't have a family. So the money that we earned, they basically gave to me, which is pretty cool. So we were able to. But having said that, I was doing all the bloody work, so that's fair enough. Well, not quite, but yeah. So quite early on, we picked up McDonald's, working with McDonald's. And just a quick reference for you. That T-shirt I'm wearing is a Greenpeace T-shirt. So I'll come back to that in a second. But I was a paid up member of Greenpeace at that time. And so 2 years in, Andrew's got this contact at McDonald's, which through his past, because we used to work a lot in corporate wear at a previous agency. So we got this contract from McDonald's. So I'm thinking, okay, they're McDonald's, I'm in Greenpeace. Well, you know, what do you do when you work in the world of design? Do you stick to your beliefs, or do you survive as a business? It was all that debate going on. So we picked up the work and we did some lovely stuff. We were basically designing, doing all the photography, art direction. So all their internal, they were franchisees. So they would create all these catalogs and all these manuals. They were almost like brand books for McDonald's franchisees that we sent out across Europe. They were a big contract. And I plagiarised the Wash logo for the front of that. And it's quite interesting actually, because McDonald's now, they use that change a little, change a lot. I think that's their line. Back then, that wasn't really their business ethics. It was completely different. And so this is about adaptation again, of how you can try and adapt yourselves in a working environment, because you've all got beliefs. You all believe in things. You know, especially now, the way the world is, there's probably more thought now about the environment. There's a lot more. There wasn't as much then. It was a little bit more.
Somebody else's problem, wasn't it, back then? Somebody
else's problem. But because I paid me subs to Greenpeace. I didn't strap myself to a whaleboat, by the way. I would have loved to, but I never did. I did a charity walk once, so I wasn't really that radical, and I paid me subs. But I misread this McDonald's. So we got this brief from McDonald's to do this beautiful big publication piece that was going to go out through Europe and then potentially over to America. And it was to talk about where McDonald's were going at that time. And so I came up with this concept called IF. And I got it wrong. And I did this piece that was really quite radical, and I almost made it look like something that Greenpeace would have done or whoever. It was really talking about where would the world be if we did all these changes, and you know how McDonald's should be. And I was really proud of it. And I was naive, you know. I went back to the meeting, and this woman had flown in from the States, and you know, I'm sat there in the meeting. I just happened to mention that I don't think I was still in Greenpeace. I can't remember now, but I mentioned it, and then. But at that time, this was happening, so it was sort of like I'd stepped too far. End of the day, this was a big machine. You know, and it still is. I mean, they do some amazing stuff, the McDonald's. You know, they're not. But at the time, there was a big anti-capitalist backlash. Yeah. You know, people were smashing their windows in, and you know, it was a heady time. And I thought that they wanted to get onto this sort of environmental thing and be bigger and bolder about it. They were doing things, they weren't not doing it, but they probably weren't doing it to where I thought they were doing it. I completely misread the situation. And that was that. We never saw him again. So we lost that account completely over this, you know. I mean, it wasn't, you know, we weren't handling McDonald's as an account. We were just a little teeny-weeny little agency, but we had an in there, and we could have done some great work, but I misread it, got it completely wrong, and it was literally, that was the last we saw of them. So, lesson learned there, really, in a way, of how you can adapt to your work and your clients. You know, your clients, you've got to survive in business. You've got to survive as creatives. And I'm not saying you sell your souls, but, you know, you've got to, I often think if you can change the corporation from within, which I felt I was part of that. I felt like I was trying to change them from within. I felt like I was doing my bit, but I pushed too far. And you've got to be able to weigh the situation up. So from there, we were doing a lot of work then in construction. We found another niche, and we were doing all sorts of big branding pieces for new developments going on. There was a massive surge in construction in sort of like early 2000s. It was phenomenal. We couldn't fail. We were doing all sorts of projects down in London, Liverpool Library. We're doing some amazing stuff. Manchester Arndale. We got into some big work, and we ended up working on Media City. We were the first agency really there before anything happened. I mean, Media City now is, you know, the hub of the Northwest TV. You know, it's an amazing place. But when we were on it, it didn't exist. They just started to build the boreholes, which, you know, go in the ground to build the building. So we sold in. I went into the meeting and we met Jamie Paxman's sister, and there was all sorts of BBC. And I got into these stakeholder meetings. I don't know how I did it. I just ended up in this meeting, and I said, you need to document this. It's going to, you know, it's phenomenal. Media City is the biggest thing in Europe. You know, so let's be doing it. So we got really in there. I mean, we were filming it, photographing it. We ended up doing a complete whole new branding document for it, and we came up with this concept about what media is. Because to me, media is about evoking an emotive response. That's what media does. What else does it do? You know, So we came up with this thing about anger, fear. So we had this concept, and we did all this beautiful photography. They spent a fortune. They wanted us to use Rankin, the photographer. Anyone heard of Rankin? No? Crikey, I'm feeling really old in here today. It's bizarre. Yeah, anyway, he's a photographer from the past. Oh, still now, but he was really up there. And I rang Rankin's agent and said, look, we've got this job at Media City, and couldn't speak to Rankin himself, had to go to his agent. He wanted, for a day's shoot, he wanted like about 200 grand, you know, something daft like that. It was a crazy figure. Yeah, so we couldn't afford him. So we ended up, anyway, we did this photography with a guy called John Spinks, a great photographer who did a lot with Bowie and different musicians, but he was up for it. So for a third of the price. And we did all these beautiful booklets. They did the branding, the logo was made up of their master plan. It's a bit of a weird logo. Yeah. But we created this whole identity, and it all went in the bin. All this. We did all this work, and it actually ended up, it never went live. You wouldn't believe it. We did all this print, and it was phenomenal. And the the MD who commissioned all this work got fired for whatever reason. I don't know what happened. He got fired, and we got kicked off the job. We went out with the phrase, baby in the bathwater.
Yeah.
Is that the phrase?
Yeah.
And so we got sacked off the job. It was a real pity. But not only that, at the time, we were doing a lot of work, which it causes a massive headache, financially a massive headache. And but prior to that, it was going so well, right? Really well. I couldn't believe it. We got this 4-year contract, right? And then I just jokingly said this coming out of a meeting, right? And this is honest truth. I said this to Andrew. I said, God, this is amazing. I said, I've got a 4-year contract. The only thing to stop us now is a global recession or a world war, right? It was one of them two, because it was so good, this account, that you couldn't make it up. And then there again, look at your history, folks. 2007, 2008 was the biggest global crash in our history. Yeah. And it was devastating, wasn't it?
Since the Great Depression, wasn't it?
It was devastating. And bearing in mind we were working in construction, pretty much predominantly solely in construction. The phone stopped overnight. The work dried up like that. It was unbelievable. So
it was the one sector, construction, the built environment, that underpins finance and vice versa. It's a really strange relationship. Finance people invest in buildings, and people who build buildings go to finance people to finance the buildings. So you can imagine when one of those parties decides to bail out.
It's horrific. I mean, it's horrific. And to have a business when you've got a small amount of staff as well, it wasn't just the three of us by then. We built up a team, and we had no money. We'd gone down off one job, being owed a lot of money that we weren't ever going to see again. Recession hit at a similar time. We were doomed.
Yeah.
We were pretty much finished as an agency, really. We probably should have shut the door. But there again, going about adaptation and how you reinvent yourself, you've got to get through tough times. If you're going to go into the creative world as designers, you're going to hit. Some of you may not. Some of you might sail off into the sunset, but some others are you're gonna have a bit of a bumpy ride, and it's part of it. It's what makes you stronger. You reinvent yourself, and you reinvent your practice, you reinvent your skill base. It's just when you're going through it, it's probably the worst feeling you're ever going to have, because when you've no money coming in as a business, you can't pay your staff. So as a business owner, you can't pay yourself. You've got to pay your staff. You've got to pay your suppliers. Luckily, I've got good suppliers. We make friends with our suppliers. Yeah. That's how we rock. And I was ringing like Sean, my photographer mate. I said, listen, because he did all the photography on this job that we never got paid for. So I said, look, I'll pay you, but I can't pay you. It's fine, Andy. Just give me. I was literally giving him a tenner here and 20 quid there and 50 quid here. Scraps of work we were getting, but we managed to get through it, and we had a great team at the time, and we did. We weren't completely on our knees. We were winning business, and we did a lot of work for a company called Rabbit Hall, which were a paper distributor, which is connected to what Luigi's doing. But we did a lot of work for them, a lot of branding work for their digital papers that were coming out, brand toolkits, all sorts of different stuff. We were winning awards. We were actually going, but deep down, I was like, it was so hard. I was financially broke myself, my own personal, I was in debt. So I didn't really enjoy this period because I was literally living from hand to mouth. So, you're going up for an award and you're picking up a award for something in Manchester, surrounded by all these agencies, and deep down you can't afford the bloody taxi home, it's a joke. But we got through it, and but it took its toll. Andrew left. He decided he had enough. He went to live in Finland, and hence we didn't get the Finnish office. We didn't leave on the best of terms. It wasn't bad, but it wasn't the best. Money can corrupt everybody. Money is the root of all evil. So we had a big period in this sort of what I call the wilderness years of not quite knowing what we were doing. Just another thing as well, by the way, talking about this brand, because I know you want to talk about branding. I've not got to that bit yet, but we will talk about branding. But branding is very niche, but it's also very broad. You know, it depends on what your terms branding are. You know, for us, we are a branded agency, but we do so much, and it's all about brands. You know, it's how you get a company's ethos and essence out there into the world. It's not all just about a logo and a font and a toolkit or a brand guideline. That's just a teeny weeny bit of it. But we can come to that later. But you know, as a studio, we were completely lost. It was a really weird time. We were getting back on our feet financially, but years were just rolling by with no direction, no interest, to be brutally honest with you. Trying to reinvent ourselves by teaming up with different artists and quirky little illustrators to try and make us look cool. You know, bearing in mind I'm getting old, I'm thinking this is just the weirdest of things. We were doing some nice work still. We were working for some nice brands, you know, did a lot of work, all sorts of different things, exhibitions. We were getting our work published in books. That book's out, Crest and Shields, we've got work in there. So, you know, we were doing all right. We weren't smashing it out of the park, and we were still trying to win work and win better work. But we decided then, Dan decided, the other brother who left decided he wanted to go and live in London. So we said, look, let's not split the company up. Let's set a studio up in London. You know, that's where the work is. That's where, you know, obviously the session's now over with. Things were building and getting better. Let's get a studio in London. So we set up a studio up in Shoreditch. But it just didn't work. It was sort of, seemed a good idea at the time, but we were just there again. The money we were getting, we were just hemorrhaging. So we were flatlining. So me and Dan decided to part our ways. Dan now has his own studio in London, and he's doing really well. And I'm still here slugging it out in Preston. Get down! I'm not bitter. So I'm at this point now. I'm finally solo, right? I'm finally on my Todd, thinking, crikey, what I'm going to do. So the first thing I did, right, going back to my phobias and anxieties, I had a phobia of money, and I couldn't open a bank statement. And when, seriously, I've never looked at a bank statement. So the business started in 2003, and by 2014, I thought it's probably about time I looked at a bank statement. I've always left it to somebody else to do. And bearing in mind, we got ourselves in financial difficulties, nearly lost the business. So I had to get myself together and sort my own act out. But as we were going through this split, and I'm going to go use that word again, adaptation, I got a phone call from one of the guys who used to work in construction. One of my contacts had gone to work at Jaguar Land Rover, and he was building a whole new factory at Jaguar Land Rover. And he said, look, we need an art piece on the side of the wall. I've been talking to these artists. I'm not happy. He said, Andy, you're the man for the job. You got the passion. Can you come up with an idea for this art piece at the side of the wall? So I went, yeah, of course I will. Bearing in mind that the company's like, you know, just gone through this split. I'm sort of like well, not on my own. I've still got a little team. But this job came in, and they gave me this stupid budget to start with. It was such a low budget, and I thought, well, okay then. So I'm ringing around. I'm talking to people across the world. I'm talking to people in China, thinking, how can I get these LEDs? And I've got this idea to do this big dynamic media wall. Because, you know, media's the thing. You don't want a physical structure that doesn't do anything. I wanted to get some media in there, some film work, you know, because I was starting to find my passion in the film thing. And anyway, I went back and I worked it to fit within their budget. It was a design masterpiece. And then they told me that wasn't the budget. They had another 400 grand or whatever it was. I can't remember now. And I fell off my chair in this meeting. I couldn't believe it. It's like, wow. So it was a huge project to deliver. And it was phenomenal. And we had literally, it was on the side of this building. It looks a bit weird. And it ended up a bit of a weird job, to be fair. It was a bit of an oddity.
It's fantastic.
But it changed the whole dynamics of the business. That one job just suddenly put us into a completely different world. And we were doing all sorts. I mean, it took a lot of, we ended up working with a company called ADI in Preston, funny enough, which I'd sort of knew of, but didn't really know them. And they could build this thing and design it all. And it was phenomenal, the engineering that went into it. And we were doing some mad stuff. You know, we ended up doing this whole art piece based on a car. You know, they just gave us a car to trash with paint, and we threw paint all over it and filmed it all. We're doing some really, really fun stuff. Yeah. So we got to meet the marketing guy at Jaguar, which was fantastic. And we were starting to do work for Jaguar to go on the screen. So we're doing predominantly film work. But then he left Jaguar, which was a bit of a shame, really, because we were doing some really exciting stuff. You know, we were doing, like, this was like sound design we were doing. And, you know, they took us out on the track with one of the cars. You know, they took us, there was 5 of us in this car, all wired up to this sound deck. And we were like the sound engineers in the back. And I was trying to film bits on my phone, because we weren't allowed to film out the window because it was all top secret stuff. And the driver, who was a race driver, took us up to 200 miles an hour in this car with 5 of us in it. I've never been as scared in my life. But we took all the data from the car and what it was doing on that performance and turned it into a graphic that could go onto these screens. So it was all data-driven graphics for the car. We were doing all sorts. So and the money we made off that job saved my business, really. That and a few other projects. It was, you know, starting to happen, but it really changed the dynamics of me, and it sort of re-engaged me with what we were doing. But I realised that I'd wanted to get away from brand. It was too hard just to try and sell brand in Preston. If you're in London or in Manchester, probably easier, but not in Preston, you know. So I'm gonna do for time. Sorry, I'm nearly at the end, to be fair. I feel like I'm just waffling.
I think you're okay.
I mean, all right. Are you bored? If you're bored, just tell me. I'll try and So anyway, we've got a new team going now. So that's the team at this time. Obviously not the team now. So Lindsay, who was working with me part-time, she was brilliant. She helped me save my bacon, really. She helped me to make money, make the business, get it profitable, get it back on its feet from the wilderness years. So now she's my business partner. We changed the studio. We got out of our old studio and we bought a property in Winkley Square. I would never have done that if it wasn't for Lindsay. And the money that I made on the Jaguar job, I invested back into the business. And we bought this building to create the artistry house. So that was it when we first got it. It was a complete tip. And we turned it into this beautiful building it is now. We've got art all over the walls. We have events. We put on talks. We're trying to get a program for this year. So it'd be great if any of you guys can come down and come to the talks. It's not a big place, but it's great. And there's always loads of wine and booze flowing. It's good. They're good, aren't they?
Yeah, no, they're excellent. And Tony's visited the place, haven't you?
Oh, you've been, haven't you? Yeah. Well, I think you've been halfway through decorating when you came. Was the art still up?
No, it was all still up.
Was it? Yeah. It's got a bit tired. We just redecorated it all because it was getting a bit tired. So anyway, the chap from Jaguar left Jaguar, which was a bit of a kick in the teeth because we were flying away with that. But then he left and he went to Hyundai. So that was a bonus. So we didn't do any more work for Jag, which was a shame. But we ended up working with Hyundai. It's now pronounced, isn't it?
Yeah.
Hyundai.
Hyundai.
And we started off doing lots of little things. We were flying out to Czech Republic, doing films in the factory. Now, by this time, I'd really got into the film stuff. And like I said, I'm getting older, you know. You can't, I don't know, I mean, you get away with it being a designer because you're cool and you've got that Italian coolness about you. Can't get away with
it's the energy levels. It's the energy levels. You've got to scale things. Even at your age, you've got to scale.
Yeah, it's
yourself
hard.
Back. And there's always a sacrifice. You give up some of the free time, but that doesn't work. So it's just scaling it down, isn't it, Andy?
Well, I'd realised I didn't want to be a designer anymore. I wanted to be
and that's a way of scaling, isn't it?
Well, yeah, it's another adaptation, isn't it? I had to reinvent myself. I knew that I want to be outdoors. I want to be lugging kit around. You know, if I'm getting older, I want to do something physical. I don't want to be sat constantly concepting. I mean, I've always been a concept guy, a creative guy, a thinker of concepts and
ideas.
Ideas, yeah, which I'll show you in a minute, which is great, but it sends you a little bit crazy after a while. So anyway, with Hyundai, we were doing all sorts of little exhibition stuff, car badges, you know, lovely little thing to do, a car badge, design a car badge with a narrative. I mean, it's small, but it's great. And when you see a car drive past with your badge on it, that's pretty cool.
Yeah.
That was for they did a a range called the Endurance, and it was all based on the endurance journey that went out to the North Pole.
Yeah.
Is it North Pole?
Yeah.
Anyway,
Yeah.
Shouldn't have my facts on that one. And it was a fantastic opportunity. And then suddenly Hyundai created this sport car, right? So we've been doing all these little bits and pieces over here, and Adam said, listen, we've got this new car. They've launched this new car called the N, and they're doing the i30N, which is he said, do you want to have a go in it? I went, yeah. So he gave me this car for the weekend, and I damn near trashed it. I took it out of the Trafford Bowling, and the fuel pump wasn't working. So one minute I'm blasting away, next minute it'd be like spluttering, then it'd be blasting away. Anyway, it suddenly came to life, and I came flying around this corner, and I was driving like an idiot. I was thinking I was a rally driver, and I came out this corner, and I hit this pothole and I blew the tyre. Couldn't believe it. I've just been given this car, and and the tyres were bespoke at the time because it wasn't completely out on the market. It hadn't been launched, and they were a fortune to change the tyre. It was so embarrassing. But anyway, I digress. And he said, listen, we've got this new car. So I said, look, give me the car. I'll go and do some photography with it, free of charge, just to prove we can do it. Never done car photography before, and my photographer, great photographer, said, I'll come with you. So we went out, and we just went around the trough. We got some beautiful shots, and they used that all in the promo we got paid for it eventually. So then they said, listen, do you want to? We need to do a TV commercial. Do you want to pitch for it? I went, yeah, I've never done a TV commercial before. I said, well, I did one. So we'd done one for a company called My Car Check, and it was a bit of a disaster. But anyway, we had one commercial. So we were doing bits of film. And I said, yeah, can we pitch for it? Just give us a chance. So they gave us the brief for this particular car. And I was a nightmare to live with because we had to win this job. I said to the team, I said, look, we have to win it. We can't not win this. If we don't win this, we're packing it in. It's our biggest opportunity. And so that was the thing. They asked us to pitch. I'm just going to quickly jump off this because I want to show you something. Because I came up with this concept and I pitched in a video. I hope the sound works. And I hope it doesn't blast it too loud. Oh, no sound. I've already got the sound just for the drama. Giving the game away now anyway. No sound. Is there any sound?
If it doesn't work by HDMI, just get it on the laptop, it's fine.
I've plugged the thing in, but it doesn't work.
Not.
Nah, no worries.
It's not been working last week as well.
Okay,
so
no,
I
that's
would
all right.
just go off the laptop.
Yeah. Shame, 'cause it's a great track. So basically, I came up with this idea. Just literally, I went in and we pitched a few ideas, but I had this concept. So basically, I'm sat in a room with probably about 10 of them, maybe a bit less. And the two of the main marketing guys had flown over from Korea, and the full marketing team was there, and I stuck that on. And the silence in the room, I thought, oh my God, I've blown this. There's no deadpan, nothing. But in the brief, the car, I don't know, have you guys heard the word petrol heads? The term petrol heads, it means somebody's really into cars, right? So when I got this car, I've got a mate of mine, Tom Kidd, who's a designer mate, me and Luigi know, and he's a proper petrol head. And he said to me, and he got a car part, he said, it's not going to be as good as the Golf or whatever. And I said, mate, anyway, I said, listen, this car is going to turn heads. It's that good, because I drove it and it was a great car. And that was it. I thought, petrol heads. Has anyone done petrol heads? Surely someone's done petrol heads, a character. So I Googled it all, and nobody had come up with this character called petrol heads. I couldn't believe it. So I presented in this concept, petrol heads, and the room was deadpan. So we presented in a few more ideas. We came out of the meeting, I thought, shit, it's just too weird. But there was one guy in the corner of the room, and he's one of the Korean guys, and he was one of the main guys. And he looked at me and he just gave me a little smile, right, a little nod. And I thought, I just wonder whether he liked it or not. Anyway, I got a call about 2 weeks later saying, Andy, you've won the TV commercial work. Phenomenal, massive budget, biggest budget I've ever had in my life. I couldn't believe it. And then it was like panic stations. It's like, I'm not a commercial guy. I haven't got a bloody clue what I'm doing. So we ended up creating these. I've got an artist mate who I work with, but I was scribbling at night and he was doodling away. We came up with these different characters that were based on engines of other cars. So we've got Beamer character who's based on a BMW. We've got Cogsworth, who's based on a Ford Cosworth engine. We've got Snoop, and she was based roughly on a Golf engine. Nobody knows that. It's top secret. Only us know that. So that was the thing. And we came up with. I'm going to quickly just jump onto this again. And we came up. The first commercial was this. Come on, where are we? Should put my glasses on. I can't see. So we'd never done a TV commercial before. So we got. Obviously, time's gone on now. They bought into the idea, the concept. They want to do it. Amazing. We've got a really great budget. We've never done this before. We can't go out there. I can't go out there with my camera and start filming cars. I haven't got a clue. I can do photography, but I can't do. So we pulled the team together. We had a guy who'd worked in there again, going back into the past in the construction world. He'd worked with us on CGI and stuff. So we got him involved to do the CGI. We worked with the company, the first TV commercial, we worked with a company called Chief Productions in Manchester, went to see them. And then we scheduled the whole shoot, and we scheduled it. I said, and there again, it's about sticking to your principles. You know, I said to them, look, every car advert you see is the same. You know, it's like some smooth dude driving over a bridge in Germany. They're all boring, right? And I said, look, this is aimed at petrol heads. We need to film it in the UK. And I was adamant, and it caused me a massive headache. Bearing in mind, it was a new client, never done a TV commercial before, but I fought tooth and nail to film it in this country. And so the production company said, right, we know Wales, let's go and film it in Wales. Brilliant. And then the week we were planning on filming, the Beast from the East came in.
Yeah.
And honestly, you would not believe this.
The weather.
Now that picture there, this side and that side and behind us was pretty much covered in snow. And it was, I don't know, it was a pure luck that the Beast from the East missed because we just scheduled the whole shoot. We couldn't shift it. We didn't have the insurance to shift it. It's very complicated trying to move a film production. It's not an easy thing to do. And I'm learning so much at this stage. It's unbelievable. Anyway, this is the commercial, the first one that we did.
Turning petrol heads. Introducing the i30N by Hyundai.
So it was that, to me, it was like a career highlight. It was phenomenal. We won 2 awards for that. It was brilliant. I thought it was brilliant. Anyway, you might have thought it was boring, but it was brilliant to do. That's what I meant.
Well,
to
within
say.
the sector at the time, what people need to, sort of some context is that all adverts were the same. The car adverts were just these unrealistic, aspirational settings.
Exactly.
Sort of the Neapolitan Riviera or the west coast of America or some strange bridge traversing Austria and Italy. It was just absolutely
We really
nonsense.
tried to break it, and I think that was the challenge. And there again, going back to design and brand.
And it was all CGI, Andy, as well. Not a lot of it wasn't real, was it?
Yeah, there was only bits of it. Only the heads were CGI. Everything else is obviously shot for real. But which led us on to. I'll just quickly show you this, and then we'll move on because I'm pretty much at the end. But we did all sorts of stuff with this campaign. It ran for 2 years, and we got contracted. Well, we weren't contracted. It was a verbal contract to do 4 TV commercials. This was the second one we did. We shot this out in Parma.
Tailored for petrol heads. Introducing the i30 Fastback N by Ion9.
So that was the second one, which we shot out. So it was a slightly different car, and it was a bit more refined car. So we based them characters. Basically, we'd stolen ideas from certain films. There's loads of references in it to Steve McQueen. There's a film called Bullet that Steve McQueen did, and it was the first what we call a fastback. A car called a fastback, which is a certain style of car, was the first film with a fastback in it. So we based his character on Steve McQueen. So we put lots of little references in, like the watch was from the same watch in the film, all sorts. I mean, we got loads of references in this film. It was great fun, and we were starting to bring the characters to life a little bit more. And things are going swimmingly well until, on that bombshell, I'm going to show you another one. So we were starting to really develop these characters and get into what was happening with the car. And basically then another change, another adaptation. The car market was starting to really turn on its head. Electrics were happening. And then Hyundai brought in a new MD who said, what we're doing, putting money behind petrol cars, scrap that, we're going to go electric. And that was the end of that account. All our marketing team left that we were dealing with. And we, that petrol heads basically went in the bin, which is a real shame because we should have done 4. But it's no sob story because obviously everybody got hit in the nuts around this time. So we just lost that account. And then this happened. Global pandemic, which none of us can prepare for, no matter how great you are in design. Having said that, that usual stuff. No travel, we can't go anywhere. But actually, what was interesting, because we'd shifted into film, right? Everybody was on lockdown. We could go out. The government said film companies can actually go out. Because we were doing film, I said, right, we're going to really push into film now. We're not having this. I'm not staying at home furloughed, sat around fiddling, watching bloody, I don't know. So let's go for it. And I got a phone call. Some of the marketing team who left Hyundai, I can't pronounce that, Hyundai. They all went to different places. Now, one of them is now with a company called 4 in London that we're working for, which is like a bit like a WeWork company. So we're doing lots of work with them. One of them went to MG. And then we ended up doing, right through lockdown, did a commercial for MG cars, which was really great load of fun. And have I got time to quickly show that out? It's only a minute. I'll quickly show you it. It's quite fun, and there's a bit of a story behind this as well. just quickly. So basically, I don't know whether you recall through lockdown, but there was a bit of a weird phenomenon going on, and lots of virals were going on of people running around in these dinosaur suits. I don't know whether they did it for a joke because they could think they could defend themselves from COVID, but it became a bit of a thing. You probably didn't realise it, but it was a thing.
It was.
So I remember seeing it, and I thought, well, hang on, this new car we were promoting for MG, which was, they'd not done a TV commercial in this country before, because it was a British brand originally, but now owned by the Chinese, but they'd not launched it properly back in this country. So we were, first agency to do a TV commercial in this country for MG for an electric car. So I thought, right, hang on then, this is an idea we can use here. So we started to introduce the dinosaur.
Introducing MG's range of electric and plug-in cars for £279 per month. It's a new era. MG, electric for everyone.
So basically, we're just implying that if you drive a petrol car, you're a bit of a dinosaur. That was the idea. But it also played into this sort of like this weird thing that was happening on. So that was that. And then COVID. That was in between lockdowns, so it was all a bit of a heady time. And then I think that's it. So that was the last sort of TV commercial we did. And that was it, really. Let's talk about branding.
I think I'm going to give you a round of applause for that, mate.
That's all right. Thank you. I just feel it's a really important story because, like I said, you're all gonna have journeys. You're at the start of your journey, and I think you've got to learn to adapt and think on your toes about what you're doing. It's not just with design, you've got to work in the here and now, but you've also got to work in the future with a bit of past thrown in at the same time.
And the interesting thing that the thread throughout all of that film is
not age well ever.
is this ability to move with the times, but also to go against the times to survive. People talk about branding. It was only literally 20 years ago that branding was corporate identity, and when we removed the word corporate because everything around the world of finance and business became a bit of a dirty word, we coined this term called branding. And it frightens the living daylights of me, really, when you really think that branding exists everywhere. But as Andy have said, it's more than bits and pieces, and there's no toolkit for it. If you can imagine this scenario where the world moves at a pace that you can never keep up with, business moves at a pace that you can never keep up with, then you can take great strength from being able to control one thing alone, and that's yourself. And branding, you spend all your time designing and branding or creating better ideas for people to make more money, and you neglect yourself. The one thing that entire story and Andy's life tells me is that he perpetually rebranding oneself, converting, trying things out, failing. And the truth of it is that in a world where people just want to show their greatest hits, we seem to forget that they come at a price, and those individuals that's created those works have probably got similar stories to Andy's. The one thing you'll never ever find is the story of the brand itself. They never like to talk about the times that they've had to shed staff or certain things didn't work out for them. But if a global pandemic affects us as designers, it's going to affect the businesses that we rely on to provide us work. And so for me, that was a brilliant timeline. It correlates very much with myself, but interestingly, as an exercise, as a toolbox, you just as you would do with any new invention, you would have to make the tools to create the invention, to make it a reality. And that's using that as an example, the world is constantly reinventing or an invention, and you're constantly having to create new tools to tackle it. That toolbox is nothing more than yourself and your team members and whoever you assemble to tackle it. It's there's no toolkit. You know.
Does anybody want to fire any questions, or has anyone got one thing they want to ask? Yeah.
Don't even.
How do you get clients? You go out there, is it networking, or do they approach you?
That's a brilliant question. If you look at Andy's stories, I can answer this for Andy, I think, but if you look at Andy's story, at no point was there a big plan or a model for attracting business. Often, the best people to talk about the work you do are the people who create it, but we're crap at doing it. We're not very good. We fumble, we get anxious.
It's hard work.
So
it's the hardest part of the business, that.
And this is the thing, but equally, somebody needs to feel that passion. An account manager won't be able to relay all your efforts, Tony, in putting a festival on, for example. So my advice to you for doing that is look at yourself, step away, step out of yourself, talk to yourself. Am I likable? Am I, interesting in the context of this meeting? Can I talk about other things in that meeting? I'm there in front of this business owner. Have I done my research into their business? Have I identified their competitors? Make them feel like you have an interest in everything that they've done and they're about to do, and you will win the business simply based on the fact that passion will outweigh somebody else's who's probably got a formula for winning business.
I think a lot of business comes from people you know and you've worked with, and
yeah.
As you go with it, like I said, I mean, that's what I'm trying to tell in this story really, because people you work with, i.e. some marketing director or manager, whatever it is, they're adapting their career as well, so you sort of go with it. I think the hardest thing is we struggle getting new business. We do a lot of pitching, which I hate. Pitching should be, especially creative pitches, they really should be banned. Having said that, we probably wouldn't have won the Hyundai stuff without doing it, so I fight with that. But it's really hard, especially when, like I've shown you there, when your business is down on its luck. We've had, as you can see, it's been a massive roller coaster, right? And when you're down on your luck and you've got to pitch to survive, it's really tough. But sometimes it can give you the best work because you're in
absolutely.
You're in fight mode. It's either we have to win this or we're dead. It's as simple as that. So yeah, but new business, it's really hard. We've had businesses who've come in and charged us enormous amounts of money a month to try and win his work. It's really hard.
The thing is, Neve, with somebody who's starting from ground zero, as we've all done, that scenario never changes. You start zero ground with every new opportunity. And then there's times when you're actually stuck and you're doing the kind of work that you really don't want to do, or the business has changed that you're working for, and new people come in and they want to undo what you've done. It's never. Business is never satisfied with what they're turning over.
There ain't no formula, is there?
There's no formula. So for you, for example, obviously I know you a little bit, is your personalities, your personality particularly, long before I see any of your work. And don't forget, I've seen thousands of portfolios, and often the portfolios I'm looking at is actually better than my own work. So if I'm going to work with you, I need to like you. You need to be likable, and you might have to fake it. And long before you get in front of a roster or a pitch list or anything like that, you have to be visible. The great thing about you two, who I've got to know very well, is that you're bloody visible. You're very noisy, you're very visible. And it's good noise, you know what I mean? And so yeah, for any of you in this room who want to go out and strike out, the one thing you can do is you can strike out. When Andy and I were coming through, I think it was probably our upbringing and just the mood out there. Finance and business were for people who'd been educated or came from a long line of people that had money or had success stories. But yet, that's boring. The people that you're interested in are the ones that are a bit edgy, a bit punky, a bit making their own stuff. as designers and creatives, you're not interested in people in
don't
suits.
toe the line. Be different.
Look at the bands you listen to. Look at the people you follow on Instagram. The people that you identify often, not because they're making shitloads of money, it's because they sound different.
I do think design has become a bit prescriptive, though. That's the
It
thing.
has.
You've got to challenge it. Sorry, what do you had a question?
Yeah, I was going to say, how do you develop and like cultivate a relevant brand without it being trendy or kitsch?
Well, that's probably what I was just trying to say then. I tried to lead on to. I mean, it's like going back to the petrol heads, really. That's a brand project. It's a new car. They need an image to go with it. So,
but there's a strategy that underpins it all.
There's a strategy that underpins it. There's the thinking behind it. It's not just a crazy idea. But then you're trying to find an idea that's nobody's done, something a bit fresh. It's really hard. You know what I mean? It's not an easy thing to do in anything, whether you're designing a logo or whether you're doing a TV commercial. If you want to stand out, I think this is the thing. This is why it's such a complex. You need years to get your head around it all, because it's not, like I said, it's not just colours and fonts, and it's everything. It's ethos. I mean, when we do a brand job, when we brought some samples, we can show in the workshop. But you know, a lot of the stuff we present when we're presenting in a brand thing, it's all right. It's all written words.
It's written. It's also strategic. Yeah. No, it is. It's
sorry, just one. Well, that bit is what gets you to find the bit that you just mentioned. How do you differentiate without just slipping into what everyone else is doing or being a bit naff?
And often your references.
That has answered your question or not.
Your references that every business will look at a competitor. Will look at. I work in the luxury sector, so you'll see a luxury brand and they want to be like them. And I'll say, well, you're a startup. What's interesting about you is that you're a startup. You can say anything you want. You're not going to be Gucci and you're not going to be Prada anytime soon. And the world doesn't need another one of them. And so in order to make it timeless and to avoid all the kitsch reference points, you have to look at where the client sees themselves in a year's time or 2 years' time or 3 years' time. And you have to write that plan. You're projecting. It's an incredibly privileged position to be in front of this individual who's got maybe 500 entities that they're having to answer to because they've sunk the money in, and you're saying quite pompously that this campaign or this strategy will deliver this. We're designers, but in art, we kind of project, we're kind of future forecasters. And get this, right, none of us are qualified in this room to forecast what the next 5 years will look like for any company.
Sorry, can I just jump in there? I think that's the thing, though. You've got to be brave, right? You've got to go. If you look at most design, you know, it's not. How often do you see something that really blows your mind? You think, wow, that's fresh. Very rare, isn't it? You know, whether it's a commercial, whether it's a packaging, whatever it is, we've all got a bit familiar. And I think it's weird. My son runs a magazine, right, in Manchester, and was it I was talking to you about? I can't remember, but he's no designer. He's just rock. He's just into music, and he does this stuff, and he does this art that's got people who are buying into. But he breaks every rule going because he's not a designer. He's not qualified. He just does this stuff that comes out of his head. And you could look at it and think, oh, it's a bit naive, it's a bit naff. But I look at it and think, well, at least he's not towing the line. He's being punk with it. Yeah. And I think that's design. You've got to be a bit punk. You've got to be a bit like, but also what Luigi's saying, the dynamics are so complicated because you could walk in a room with a marketeer or whatever, and if that person is scared of breaking out from the norm, you've no chance.
You've no chance.
You know, but you at least got to try, you know. But most people want to keep safe. Oh yeah, my boss will like this. This will work because that brand's doing it because it's bound to work because they're doing it. It's not the case, you know. I mean, it's like now with research. I mean, it's like with doing anything. It's like education, for example. We do a lot in education. So we'll do some concepts, and they'll get a bunch of students like you guys in the room and present these concepts. Now, if we do anything that's a little bit radical, all the students go, oh, you know. There's all this weird feedback. We never get like, yeah, it's great. Because they're all playing it safe because you're sort of programmed to, if that makes sense. Sorry, I'll be running out of time.
No, I just want to ask a question. For our consultancy module, quite a few of our teams work with real life clients, and so that of course comes with lack of communication and lack of deadlines being met from clients and stuff like that. What is your best piece of advice in being able to manage that communication between the client and yourself as a team?
When you say lack of communication, in what way? The client with you?
Yeah.
So the client in this case would be the agency, or is it the?
No, just like a client, like a example, let's say.
Right. Well, in my experience, that should never happen.
No.
Right. And if you get a whiff of that, get out of the room. No, but obviously you can't leave every brief. You have to find who's responsible for, obviously managing the delivering of the project, and it's usually somebody in the finance department, that's been tasked to pay for this. And don't forget, there's individuals between you, layers of people between you and the actual boss. You need to find the individual. He needs to actually be in the room when he's talking to you, giving you a brief. And it needs to be written down, Tony. It needs to be, everybody needs to be part of that process. So once it's timelined out, everybody's copied in. The stage delivery of a project is so crucial. And it's no good making it just in time, because that whiff of just in time, we just got there in time, will destabilize the project. Now, I'm not going to sit here and think that I've hit every deadline. I'm behind on one this morning, because there's creatives you want to push, and you want to push every minute out of the project. But equally, ideas don't fall from the heavens on your lap. There's often cases where, you really struggle, don't you, Andy? And they come when they come. But if you're honest with a client and you tell them, look, I need a little bit more time because this is going to be this, the other, and you show them the progress you're making, that buys you the time. In the case where there's no communication whatsoever, you, as a designer, as somebody, this is your job. You want to be paid at the end of it. You want your idea to be seen in the world. Make sure that you manage that, you protect the job. Make sure that people see it at the time that they want to see it. Yeah. You have to script, you have to write a management program.
If you're working with somebody who's not communicating with you, then they're probably not worth working with.
They're not.
It doesn't make any sense, because I think, it depends on the client and the project, and I think you've always got to have a process in place.
But the other thing, Andy, as well, and this is with total respect, and this is why I hate a lot of consultancies that do not engage with young people. It's very apparent that if Andy and I went to see the said client or the agency that you guys are doing the consultancy with, they wouldn't piss us about, They would probably see us as their equal. And the problem is as young people, they probably think, oh, it's a student project, or it's this, I can't be asked. And what they do is that they appoint somebody to handle this, who doesn't really want to handle it. But get this, that's your first taste of how it really is in any room with any design client. When I was starting out, and it's often the case here now as well, the bigger the business, the more serious the teams are about the business, about you being in the room. But there are occasions where often you are dealing with somebody, very often, you are dealing with somebody that doesn't know anything about what you do. And as designers, we're very good at talking about what we do because we've done it, we've created it. What better qualified would there be to talk about one's work by themselves? And that doesn't make a jot of difference to the other person on the other side who has been tasked to commission you, to project manage you. So make the job easier for them. You set the timeline. So in other words, there'll be a delivery date and you set the stage deliveries for every single one. And you can write that up as simple as a 5 bullet point email. And just constantly remind them that this is going to happen then. And there won't be any slippages. Insist on a time management. Next question.
No, I think we're moving on.
No, just wanted to say thank you very much first of all, just recognizing that it's 11.
Yeah.
So
Is it 11 o'clock already?
Yeah, wow.
Have I waffled on for that long? Oh, I'm so sorry.
If you go somewhere else and do something else, this is your moment to go.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, I have to go. possible.
Yeah.
But otherwise, feel free
Yeah.
to use the space as much as possible.
Yeah. Stick around if you want. Yeah.
It's just I'm recognizing that they might also.
Yeah,
have
apologies,
other
sorry.
students, They are in lectures, they have other stuff that they might need to do.
Sorry, guys. Waffle.
Marketing students.
Marketing students. Ah.
Thank you.
Hey, no
Thank you.
worries.
So